Rich, we're back with another 12-minute hot take, and I want to talk Chad Gable. You want to talk Chad Gable. Fans want Otis to turn on Chad Gable. Last night on Raw, we saw Otis come close and then pull back. And we saw Maxine get on her hands and knees, but also push back a little bit backstage on Chad Gable. When he said it was good faking the injury, she goes, "No, I'm really hurt." Tozawa showed a little spine, but there's that. Pat McAfee mentioned it that when you're in a cult, it's hard to break free. I think Chad Gable has improved his stock in recent weeks by showing that he can be a serious character and in a heel realm and not a comedy heel. The shush stuff has been dropped. He's not relying on some of the kind of the mid-card humor. And I think it's actually helped set the stage for what can be not just Gable being elevated on the roster as a heel who fans would buy in a more serious match, but also it's leading to Otis, I think, having a surge of popularity again that can lead to him being a valuable second tier babyface. Tell me what you think about Gable lately versus before, and if you're in agreement with me that he's on a trajectory to being more valuable. We'll get into the timing of that in a moment on the next kind of round when it comes to his contract. But what position do you think he's in now compared to just a couple months ago?
I think he's in a better position. It's less jokey. Like you said, there's more opportunity for growth. In fact, I think back to when he first got into WWE by way of NXT, and he was trying to stalk Jason Jordan into creating the world's greatest tag team. Uh, and then as they transition from that awesome team going up against DIY, going up against all of the luminaries of that era of NXT, American Alpha, not world's greatest tag team. I'm having Kurt Angle, Chad Gable vibe
They
mixing, and
want
so
that.
forgive
They
me.
want that.
They're doing a great job. I've been
Yep.
Gable pilled. Uh, I think with this group, and we were talking before we recorded. If you all look online, there's a cool video that shows in 2020, which is crazy that it was 4 years ago. Chad Gable was recruiting Otis because he was his attention to detail. He thought he was a guy who could believe in his work ethic, and literally the opposite things were being yelled at Otis when he breaks down. So I think going forward, the sky is the limit for him, especially under Paul Levesque, who again going back to those days in NXT, him and Regal greatly respected Gable and his role as an American athlete turned pro wrestler in terms of amateur wrestling, and I think his character now has enough of an edge that he can go wherever they feel like he can fit.
It's tough. Like it's tough when you have a shtick that's working with the crowd to abandon it. I mean, to move away from it. We even Danny Garcia, like the crowd is reacting to his silly dance, his whatever that thing was, and he kept doing it because he was getting a reaction. But I think it limited how people saw him. He didn't seem like a serious person doing it. Chad Gable, same thing. He has this, the shoosh thing that he's been doing, and the crowd's into it. And a couple other kind of catchphrases and mannerisms. And he has pulled away from that, and it's made his character more ominous towards Otis, where I think fans are actually more eager to see Otis break away because Chad has become a more serious, threatening, despicable person and not a comedy figure doing a comedic breakup. And I think that's a deliberate shift in tone, and I think it's a smart shift in tone. And I think it sets up Gable beyond the Otis breakup to be higher on the card than I would have predicted that was really in the realm of possibility just 2, 3 months ago.
Yeah. When you think about Alpha Academy and you think about what it was for him, it worked too well, like you were mentioning, because it wasn't just Otis. You have Tozawa, and then you also have what's going on right now with uh, how they're all learning the lessons from Sami Zayn without actually learning them. And that's the best type of pro wrestling where you can see, learn from my story,
Hmm.
and they're not. And we can see as audience in real time, it's like a horror movie. Don't go in that room, don't go down those stairs, go out the window, go to the car. And each of these folks are making decisions. Even Maxine. Maxine, you
Hmm.
mentioned her injury. It was great to see her say, "Wait, no, I really was injured and you didn't care about me." You could see the
Yeah.
wheels turning in her head. And I think all four of them are benefiting from the more serious turn because the work they've put into their characters is getting rewarded now.
when it comes to Chad Gable's contract coming to him, we're getting a lot of these updates on contracts. I don't think, like even Becky Lynch, they acknowledged her on Raw last night, and I think they're going to. I think they're confident that she's going to come back the way that they're talking about her, even if she's on hiatus and her deal expired. I don't think they're going to let many wrestlers go. I don't think AEW factors in a ton right now because I think WWE sees, the signings that they made didn't really affect AEW positively or them negatively so far, and there's only so much room in the budget to sign away people. Gable would certainly be a good fit in AEW, maybe more so than some wrestlers whose contracts come due, but he's not going to move the needle for AEW given the position he's in, and AEW has plenty of really good wrestlers. So it would just come down to, toy collecting for Tony Khan, where, the human action figure gets to have another dream match with another wrestler that Tony admires. But, from a pay-per-view quality standpoint, TV standpoint, there's just no shortage of Chad Gable like quality wrestlers in AEW. So to me, Gable's better off staying in WWE because WWE can use more people like him, people who can have really good state-of-the-art matches. And his amateur back, he's Kurt Angle-like in terms of how he's adapted to pro wrestling. And he's won me over in terms of breaking the issue of being a comedy figure who, when he tried to be serious, you couldn't take seriously. So, from his contract, the reporting on his contract that's coming due at the end of the week, how much do you think WWE covets him? How much should they covet him? And do you agree with me that there's more room for him to be what he can be in WWE than just being another good worker who's going to land somewhere between Kyle O'Reilly and Danny Garcia at one level and Will Ospreay and Okada at another? He'd be somewhere in the middle of those. But money wise, I don't think it's worth AEW to compete with what WWE's offering, assuming WWE values him enough to give him an offer he's not insulted by. Rich.
The fact that he's still on television and in this role tells me that they value him greatly. And you couple that with right now, he's not worth what you're talking about for AEW. But if I'm Gable or I'm his agents or representation, I would think this next deal, depending on how he's taken care of in terms of storyline, character protection, development, he could be a guy where we're talking 3 years from now. Hey, wow, they really should look at Chad Gable as an option because he's done all he can do in WWE. He now has a character to go with the wrestling ability. He can help AEW out, or he can stay and make more money. It's not lost on me. Most of these folks were smart enough to have their contracts around the time of the last television deal, and lo and behold, their deals are running out right before the next ones kick in.
Mm-hmm.
So they're in the best position possible to sell themselves to WWE. And under Levesque again and his leadership, you're not going to have the rug pull out from under you, because I think that would be where the trepidation is. Maybe I take a little less or maybe a lot more money to go to AEW, and I am now in a position where I don't know what I'm doing, but I know Tony's going to give me great matches. Versus he's in a feud with Sami Zayn. He has a stable that he's kind of currently feuding with faction wise. The possibilities out there with the Creed brothers and the departure of Gable Steveson for them to be brought in as his version of American Alpha.
Yep.
Now I've done it backwards to complete the cycle. His version of the world's greatest tag team or Team Angle.
Oh,
And
gotcha.
that would be quite good for him because that shows it isn't just me being the comedy guy. I now have some toughs behind me, and we're gonna beat you with our athletic ability, and I'm gonna be the voice. I'm gonna be the talker, and not just a manager.
Now, with the creeds, and I think that is where things are going after dissolving of the current Alpha Academy. I don't. A month ago, I would have thought, oh, Gable's going to be the player coach for the creeds, the voice for them, the agitator at ringside, the personality that the creeds haven't shown, and Gable has at a much higher degree. And so he would be more the coach. But now I'm looking at what Gable has done and how he's impressed me in how just believably mean in a more serious, less comedic way he's been with the three people that are currently in Alpha Academy. I think Gable should be not Ric Flair to Tully and Arn, to use a dated reference, but like a serious singles wrestler who actually is pushed at a high level alongside the Creeds rather than a player coach kind of role where he's there sort of to take a beating before someone gets to the Creeds.
I look at, and we've talked about in the past movies and kind of how wrestling ties into stuff. I look at him as Mr. DuPont from Foxcatcher. he can be the brain, like you said, the singles wrestler, but he's
Mhm.
telling these tag team, you're going to be on my level. You're not going to fail me like these guys did. And if they wanted to add another woman to the roster as a replacement for Maxine, that's equally adept. If it was going to be Ivy Nile again, that makes sense too. Now maybe she isn't moved to the level of world champion, but again, we have this coda, we have this creed, no pun intended. This is where we're pushing. I think he should push for Intercontinental title right now in the present, but I have no problem if he continues on this trajectory, seeing him with the World Heavyweight title by end of year, or if he was Mr. Money in the Bank.
Yeah, I look at the layout, and we'll get into this in the Wade Keller Pro Wrestling Podcast flagship edition that we'll be recording right after this. The lay of the land of the Raw based world title between now and fall, like the end of summer. There's so many possibilities, and I when you bring up Gable being world champion level, I'm not quite there yet with him. As much as I'm complimenting him, I think an Intercontinental or U.S. title reign, or something feuding with somebody who's in the world title mix but isn't at that moment fighting for it, feels more like a natural ceiling for him, especially because I look at the lay of the land with Drew McIntyre, CM Punk, Gunther, and Seth Rollins, and I don't know that he's proven to me he should leapfrog them. I think the idea that he could be a number 3 or 4 heel in the top tier and not a mid-card comedy figure is a big accomplishment, and a big step up from where I perceived him 2, 4, 6 months ago. But I'm not quite. I'm not there. I mean, ring wise, it'd be good. I'm not ruling it out, but I'm certainly not there yet that I would have him leapfrog any of them. So to me, Gable being world champion feels like it's more a year and a half, 2 years away of them protecting him building more of a resume as a guy who comes across as a main event level serious heel, and managing the Creed brothers or coaching them has a chance to hurt or help the image that he is also a serious top level singles wrestler. So I think there's some journey to cover before we get there. I think we can get there with him based on what I'm seeing, but I'm not convinced. Rich.
Yeah, I think he can get there. Like you said, the year and a half, if that's the compromise I have to make for my Gable agenda, I think that'd be fine for me.
Yeah.
I always note that when you win the Money at the Bank, you have that year from the date, so that would be about a year and change from now, where we could be talking post WrestleMania, and Gable's let the title kind of or the Money in the Bank recede to the background, and you'll never see him coming, et cetera, et cetera. I look at him, and much like similar to what they've been doing with several other things in WWE, they could mirror this storyline 2 years from now with Gable as the here champ and Sammy trying to dethrone him, and make it a really cool epic that now has, as they've been doing with this new regime, tying these stories and layering them on top of each other in a way that you see the threads and it isn't just something you have to head canon your way through.
I will add as a final note, he is 38 years old. Um, and so it's kind of like move a little. You got to move a little quickly if you're going to move him to main event status. If we take my plan and wait a year and a half, he's going on 40 at that point. And that doesn't mean I think he's a young 38 in terms of
Mhm.
wear and tear in the ring and all that. But then you have kind of a small window, kind of like with Damian Priest. You go, okay, if we're going to do something, we got to do 2, 3 years with him at a top level, and then he might start aging out or slowing down a little bit. And perhaps with the way he takes care of himself, he's got a 5 year window to be a top guy. But you don't want to wait too long, but you also don't want to rush it and have him leapfrog people. I don't think he should be leapfrogging at this point. Any closing words on Chad Gable before we sign off here?
No, I think one, I want to be proud that we're slowly and steadily getting under that 12-minute mark, and gonna, it's like the
Well,
12-minute mile. We're
yeah.
aspiring, and I think Gable's going to be a person that, if anything, I'm happy that we can see this sort of growth out of him,
Yeah.
and it's not minutes wasted when you see him on TV.
I want to shift to the Wade Keller Pro Wrestling Podcast, and we're going to discuss Otis's upside as part of that discussion. And so I encourage everybody to subscribe if you haven't yet to our free podcast. It's the Blue Logo Show when you search Wade Keller in your podcast app. And yeah, just search Wade Keller and you'll see a red logo and a blue logo. The red logo is for our post shows, which also are simulcast here on YouTube and available for download on our podcast feed. And then the blue logo show features our weekly flagship and some other content throughout the week, including some long form interviews. So check that out to hear the rest of my conversation with Rich. We're going to talk Otis. We're going to talk Pat McAfee. We have quite the agenda of what we're going to shift to and talk about. And everybody who is listening to us here on YouTube can listen for free to the flagship. Again, that won't be on YouTube. The flagships right now are audio only on the Blue Logo Show. So check that out, everybody. Search Wade Keller right now on your podcast app, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, whatever Android app you use, or just about everywhere that podcasts exist. Thanks for joining us. Please comment below. I monitor the comment section, and so I invite you to give your thoughts on Chad Gable's upside and what Rich and I discussed. I will reply to your comments, and while you're at it, please subscribe to this channel. And that is certainly helpful. And just spread the word on social media to other wrestling fans if you like the content that we are producing. Thanks, Rich. And by the way, Rich Fann is a PWTorch VIP analyst, and we do a weekly podcast that's VIP exclusive called Everything with Rich and Wade. Our latest example of that dropped Friday. So if you become a VIP member, then you can download that show and hear the full conversation that Rich and I had. There's some details on the screen. You can pause the screen and subscribe if you'd like to explore more of our VIP exclusive content. We've been in business 35 years and have a ton of cool stuff waiting for you and new stuff coming out every day. If you like the tone we take covering pro wrestling and our approach to it compared to other places that are out there, good way to get even more of it and support us is through VIP membership through Patreon, your Apple podcast app account, or directly through our website. All the details on that URL, pwtorch.com/govip.